If I were to evaluate all of the jobs that I've had and base success based on income, the job that I have now is the clear winner. But if I were to look at job joy, I peaked at the age of 20. And I imagine a lot of us did at the summer camp or wherever it was. There were jobs that were a lot of fun. When I was 20 years old, I was working in the summer as a pedicab driver downtown Annapolis. If you don't know what a pedicab is, it's kind of like a rickshaw. It's an open cab, but there's a bicycle attached to it on the front. And we would ride around downtown Annapolis. We would give rides to people who were just going from point A to point B, but we would also do historical tours. There was no hourly wage, and despite that, it was the best paying job I'd had to date. Because for every jerk who found out that we worked just for tips and at the end of his ride said, "Here's a tip, get a better job, ha ha ha," there was somebody who paid you $100 for making up a ghost tour for their kids. And it all kind of balanced out. But the biggest memory from that summer was the end of a very long shift. I'd showed up at 9 a.m. and had worked through my regular shift. We usually worked like 4 or 5 hour shifts. And then one of the other people didn't show up, and I stayed for their shift, and then I stayed, and I'd stayed throughout the whole day. And it was well into the evening. It was about 10 o'clock at night, which is when we usually put the pedicabs back into the garage and just called it an evening. But I was tired, but I was in great shape. This was probably the most fit I'd ever been. True story, there was one woman who actually wanted to give me an extra tip just for touching my calves because they were so muscular. And I'm riding along, I'm going to the garage to put the pedicab away for the night, and a man flags me down, and I'm hoping that it's a short ride because I'm exhausted. And he tells me that he wants me to take him across the bridge to a restaurant, and it's a long ride, and I'm exhausted. And I get on my radio, we had little CB radio sort of things, and I called, and I'm looking for somebody else who will take him, and no one else is available. They've all got fares, they're doing historical tours, nobody else can take the guy, so I say, get in. But I warn him, I tell him, I'm tired, I might get halfway up the bridge and tell you you've got to walk the rest of the way. He says, that's okay, at least you're getting me halfway there. So I'm pedaling, and these things only have one gear, so it's slow. And I'm grinding up that bridge, praying that I make it. And when I made it to the top, I felt like Rocky winning a fight. Like I was ready to jump up and cheer, because then it was downhill. It was all downhill from there. And I was coasting along, and there was the breeze. The wind was moving. It felt good. I'd never been to this restaurant that he asked me to take him to before. And I take a left. I'm following the way over, and I see the restaurant. And it's at the top of a very steep entryway, which at that point in time looked like Mount Kilimanjaro. It was, in fact, only about 20 feet, but it was an incredible vertical incline. So I hit it with as much speed as I could and worked hard, but I got about halfway up that hill, and my legs had nothing left. They had given everything that they had to give. And the pedicab started moving slowly backwards. So I look behind me, and I see there are cars coming on the road. I can't afford to go backwards, so I slam on the brake. And brake is the right word because there was only a brake on the back wheel. There was nothing on the front wheel. And the bike stopped, sort of. And to my horror, I realized that while the bike had stopped moving backwards, the forward momentum had not stopped entirely, and I watched as the front wheel slowly lifted off the ground. I was a theater major. I kept my sense of calm as well as I could in my humor, and I turned backwards and said, "This is your captain speaking. The previously predicted failure of the engines has occurred. We will not be reaching our final destination. You may have reached that your seats are no longer in the upright position. That's going to continue. Please brake for a very slow impact because the bike was literally moving like a centimeter at a time, so slowly. We all watched in horror, and I said, I promise to do everything I can to make sure I don't fall on you. And I ended up gripping onto the bike, clenching with my thighs as well as I can, and I was 5 feet in the air. The couple got out of the cab, slowly, and thanked me, sort of, gave me a horrible tip. But the next year, I was working there again, and I got a call on the radio, and it turns out it was the same couple. They'd asked for me by name, because I was the best part of their vacation.